what is the sequence of information that we need to encode here in this story to change people's thinking.
Video is the most powerful disseminator of brand we have, but it's got to be polished. It's got to be good. And you've got to come off as authentic and purposeful.
So my mission here is really in launching the brand Elizee is to empower a woman's dynamic lifestyle.
Focus on the people first, then focus on the task. You can build greatness from within.
I'm Richard Gearhart.
And I'm Elizabeth Gearhart. You have just heard some snippets from our show tonight, and the whole show was totally amazing. So stay tuned and listen to the rest of it. We had incredible people.
I'm Richard Gearhart.
And I'm Elizabeth Gearhart.
Welcome to Passage to Profit, the show that's all about entrepreneurism, small businesses, and the intellectual property that makes it happen. Tonight on our show, we're going to have JD Gershbein, who's a speaker, thought provocateur, and humorist. He's also the CEO of Owlish Communications, which helps professionals get noticed on LinkedIn. And our executive spotlight is September Smith, podcast host and mentor of other podcasters.
Right. She does a lot. So if you want to be on a podcast, talk to her. And after that, well, we have Erika Carrero. And I think this just says it all. Handcrafted Italian leather shoes. and then we have Roy Peter with We Build Teams. And you know, it is so hard these days to find the right good talent and to see what your organization needs where. And that's where Roy comes in.
Yep. Good talent for sale. So
no, there isn't much out there. And you need the right talent. So Roy really does a good job of looking at the whole organization and helping you find that.
That sounds great.
So on to IP in the news.
Yes. Before we get to our distinguished guests, we'll be talking about intellectual property in the news. And
because Richard is an intellectual property attorney, patents, trademarks, copyrights.
I am. And so what is first up on IP in the news?
Well, Amazon. So for those of you who go to the grocery store, or I think this could be any store, but I think first they're going to do it in grocery stores because, as you know, Amazon bought Whole Foods. And ever since they bought Whole Foods, they've been doing a whole bunch of retail patents. So they just had a patent issue where you just put the item in your cart and it scans it for you. And you no going through the checkout, no doing those handheld scanners, no self-checkout, just boom, the cart does it all.
I think they do that already in Asia, though. I think there are some grocery stores where you put your stuff in the cart and you just walk out the door and it scans and charges your credit card at the same time. So
I can hardly wait.
Yeah, I can hardly wait too. And it's interesting because I'm hearing more and more from different sources that brick and mortar may be coming back a little bit. I think part of it is just the whole COVID situation where people were cooped up for so long, they want to get out and do things.
Or they're sick of all those boxes they have to break down for the recycling.
You know, we had to buy a second recycling bin. We've got all the stuff that keeps coming. Yeah. So, you know, I spend a lot of time out there with the recycling. But anyway, it's, you know, so they're obviously preparing for this and investing in a lot of technology that will make shopping different too. So
yeah.
Yep.
Welcome to the future.
Welcome to the future.
And then we found a patent that we thought was very useful, but a little bit funny.
So it's a bird diaper patent. Now, why didn't I think of that?
You put a diaper, when you let your bird out of its cage and fly around the house, you put a diaper on it. If only they could catch all the pigeons in New York.
Right. Yeah. That's like a new requirement for New York residents. Catch a pigeon a day and put a diaper on it. You know? So, but no, this is for people who own birds. And so, you know, it has a place for the bird's wings
to come
out so it can still flap its wings. And then it has a tiny little hook on the back of it that will allow you to put it on a leash. So if you want to take your bird for a walk, or, you know, you want to see it flying around in your room on a string or something, then, you know, this is the invention for you.
I didn't look to see if it's for sale, but who knows? Good idea, though.
Good idea. All right.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay, so let's go on to Richard's roundtable.
Right. And so now it's time to hear from our guests. about what they think about the issues and discussion we just had, and also whether or not you have any questions about intellectual property. So JD, you're up first. What do you have to say about all this?
Well, I think it's Amazon's sandbox, and they have all the toys. And if they want to do whatever, they can do whatever. And it's interesting how we're going to places now, and the modern conveniences have really stepped up. So these automatic checkouts, everything is digitized. Everything is at your fingertips. There's no real shopping experience anymore. You're in the store, you're down the aisles, you fill up the cart, you're out, you're paid for, and you're out to the car and going to another store where you can do the exact same thing. So I don't find it surprising, folks. I marvel at the technology. They're disrupting the disruption at this point, and nothing is the way we knew it.
Yeah, I certainly can't disagree.
Do you remember the cash registers with the little old lady poking with her finger? Those are gone.
So September, what are your thoughts?
Around the Amazon thing, unfortunately, my first thought goes to, okay, what's the insidious agenda behind this? But I mean, that aside, I look at it and I mean, it hits all the marks for social isolation and for personally, I hate shopping. So that's great for me, in and out. The bird thing, I'm slightly troubled by that, even just trying to visualize it. But well, obviously there's a need.
It's an old patent. I don't think it's the product's out there yet.
And it was unique enough they were able to get a patent on it.
So yeah, I mean, I'm with you on the insidious part. One of my colleagues just got his home wired with electronic internet lights, and I'm just thinking, so they already, now they're going to know your light habits, right? And we have one of these Neato floor vacuum cleaners that goes around, and somebody told me that all of the information about your floor plan is collected by the robot and sent to the Neato place. Mm-hmm. And that was just amazing. It's like, well, why would anybody want to know what my floor plan is? But that's
because then they know how much money you have.
I guess.
Do you live in a tiny little house or do you live in a big house?
Yeah, but I mean, that's just so bizarre. So, I love technology, but I'm also a little on the skittish side.
All data is golden to marketing.
Spoken as a marketer. So, Erika, tell us what's on your mind.
Yeah, in terms of the Amazon patent, so Amazon has had a pilot store, a bookstore for a while here, at least 2-3 years, where it does exactly what it does. You go to the store, you browse, you take a book, and then you go out. So it's been working well for a while, and then it's interesting now that they've gone through the pilot that they're ready to do the patent. So it's quite interesting now.
Yeah. So where are you located, Erika?
I'm in close to San Jose, California.
Oh, okay.
Just close to San Francisco. Yes.
The future keeps the march in. Roy,
yeah.
What are your thoughts?
I think I love the convenience factor of being able to just put your items in the cart and have it automatically be scanned. But I think Amazon might hate me because I'm one of those shoppers that tend to take a look at something and go like, I'm on a diet. I need to put that back. Like, I'm wondering in terms of merchant services, like, how does transactions work? I mean, does it scan when it goes in? Does it scan when it goes out?
No,
how many times are you allowed to change?
Yeah, it scans when you goes out the door. That's when I think they have cameras that scan the product.
That's pulling your leg. But on a serious note, it's all about data, right? Amazon is collecting data. They're collecting data from Alexa. They're collecting anything that is an intelligent device is gathering data, right? This allows AI and machine learning devices to do a deep dive in terms of analytics. So I think it's a great thing because they can market products that are more catered towards you. I'm for it.
Yeah. Well, it's not like we have a huge amount of choice in the matter, right?
Yeah. So we have a great marketing creative person here. Kenya, what do you think?
Well, I think it's cool, but I also think it's a little scary in that the more we get advanced, like I feel like it phases out people, right? So if you don't need people to ring things up and put things in bags for you anymore, and you could just walk out the door, it kind of shrinks that. And I just am always like people over robots. But on the other flip side, with the whole bird thing, I agree with September. It's a little weird, right? And which is probably why it was easy for them to get a patent, because I'm sure no one else has thought of this, right? Yeah, it's strange, but
Yeah.
I guess I would have to see it. And if they, were able to really articulate the benefits of it, I might be interested in seeing a little more, but it's weird.
Yeah. Do you have birds, Kenya?
I don't have a bird, but I grew up with birds. So I do know that if you let them out, they will go all over the place. But, I don't know. How would you, I think it would be difficult to get the bird to stand still long enough to get it on, right? Like that would be a task within itself. So I don't know.
By that time, the bird's already done its business because
Right.
it's freaking out. You may not
Or
need
it's
the
trying
diaper,
to
right?
escape and it's like feels tormented. So I don't know.
That's hilarious.
Very creative. The more creative an idea you have, the easier it is to get the patent.
Right. Whether it's actually useful or not, that's a second question. But no, that's absolutely fantastic. So we're going to take a break right now. We'll be back with more Passage to Profit right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to Passage to Profit. This is Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart here, and we're going to be talking now with our guest this evening, JD Gershbein. And JD is a CEO of Owlish Communication, and he is a speaker, a raconteur, a provocateur, an improviser, writer, social scientist, business psychologist, humorist, philosopher, consultant, coach, video producer, broadcaster, marketer, improvisational comic, cartoonist, playwright, blogger, blues pianist, cinephile, and a pizza connoisseur. So,
Hey, JD, what don't you do?
No. But before we do that, it's a very impressive list. But I wanted to know, what is your favorite pizza, and what makes for a pizza connoisseur?
He's in Chicago, so okay.
All right, he gets extra pizza credit for that for sure. So,
well, am I really all that? What on earth is my deliverable? I do all these, but what am I actually producing? Yes, I am all those things. Thanks for having me, everybody, and great to be here in this digital environment with you. What makes for great pizza? I think taste. It's got to taste really good. And boy, I'll tell you, thin crust, thick crust, pan, you name it, it's all good.
I grew up in the Chicago area, and we used to go to Gino's East. I don't even know if it's still there anymore. But when we went, there was lines around the block because it was so good. So, are they still there? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
They are still here.
Uh-huh.
They're nestled in the greater downtown Chicago area. Still a very cozy place.
Yeah.
Good za, as we like to say. When you're in Chicago, you call it za. Let's get some za. Yes, I'd like a slice of za, please.
We haven't been to Chicago for a long time. We'll have to go back for the za.
Well, come on, I'll take you out for za.
All right.
Okay.
It's a deal. And do they send by FedEx or?
Well, you do have a couple. Yes, you do have Lou Malnati's. I'm giving them a plug and a half here. They have their pie in the sky. You can order it shipped on blue ice, and they'll come right to your door, ready to go.
I'm totally down for that.
I see another 10 pounds coming on.
They ship all over the world.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's really great. So,
he's also a LinkedIn specialist.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us about that?
Oh, that's right. That's the day job, right?
Yeah.
At this point, I think we all have to specify day job versus side hustle these days. That is true. The information you have is correct. And I was one of the first independent LinkedIn consultants, hung out my shingle in 2006 at a time when nobody was outsourcing me for the work I do today. And a lot of things had to happen for me to have a career. And fortunately, they did.
So what's the most important thing to do on LinkedIn?
I think it's to participate, Elizabeth. And I'm not being tongue in cheek at all. I think what we've seen, and when you look at pre-pandemic, peri-pandemic, and post-pandemic, and if we're trying to inch our way toward a post-COVID-19 world as we tape here today, what happened before isn't working, and the platform is ever changing. It's as dynamic can be. And whereas everything around LinkedIn is changing, best practices have remained best practices. So we still have to communicate with people, and we still have to put our digital best foot forward. Yeah. And we still have to leverage the medium to its full potential. Those who are not taking the time to really absorb what they're seeing, or bringing critical thinking or design thinking to what's happening in front of them, they're missing out. They are not seeing the opportunities that the site presents. Mm-hmm. And the nature of my practice is to help people key in and become finely attuned to those opportunities. So when they do present, you're prepared.
I mean, one of the challenges, I think, is, generating original content. I mean, I think, we want to be, we want to project ourselves. We want people to know who we are. What kinds of advice do you give for LinkedIn people to kind of help build the content library and, form positive impressions on their LinkedIn network?
I think that it really comes down to a commitment to excellence and developing a very tight-knit association with your product, service, company, skill set, or niche, and making sure that everything is kind of what we would call on brand. I work with people on a daily basis who want to stand out. JD, I want to stand out. Can you help me build a brand? And I can to a certain point, but there are so many things that we can't control when it comes to building this vague, nebulous concept called a brand. That kind of builds for us in the hearts, minds, and eyes of the people with whom we're interfacing. And LinkedIn gives us the infrastructure to do that. So what I'm doing, and the way that I challenge my clients and students, is to become so closely associated and bundled in with what it is they do, that when that conversation comes up, that they surface right to the top. There's a concept I've elucidated called the psychic hierarchy, what other folks might call top of mind. And top of mindedness becomes super important right now because we're all self-absorbed. We're all forgetting. We're all having things fall through the cracks on a daily basis.
Thank God you said that.
When you're able to stay in front of people on a regular basis, which, as you say, is through original content, you have a fighting chance.
Right.
That's really great advice. I mean, what do you think about video versus still pictures? I kind of am. Mm-hmm. I'm torn between the two, and I think it has to be super good content for me to listen to a video. What do you think?
Interestingly, I was one of the first to put video on LinkedIn at a time when LinkedIn's hosting capabilities for video were very crude by today's standards. Now all you have to do is basically just channel it in right from your iPhone. But it's not about having a video right now, Elizabeth. It's about having video that's going to be watched, and that there's something that your viewer will take away. And much of the video that I see, and I'm going to just speak frank here. May I speak frank? You would want me to speak frank. I know. I was waiting for that, Richard. Thank you for explaining that. So much of the video that we see is unwatchable. There's no messaging. There's no value being created or disseminated. And there's a difference now in producing video that's just for video's sake and video that's truly going to get watched and does your brand a favor. So I'm always encouraging people who want to elevate and have a voice and use visual branding. Video is the most powerful disseminator of brand we have, but it's got to be polished. It's got to be good. And you've got to come off as authentic and purposeful and relate to the viewer somehow. Call to action notwithstanding, it's how you parse yourself out through video on a daily or regular basis that's going to get you the incoming traffic.
What do you think about using humor? I know that now you and I had a really interesting conversation about improving your business. And that's something you're teaching people to do now, which I've never, ever heard of that before.
improv has a role in business, and it's even a more deeper role than we originally envisioned, because the same tenets of communication that you would use on stage apply in a sales scenario. And I've studied improv since I was in my late 20s and performed with a troupe back then, where there were really no outlets outside the famed Second City in Chicago, where I took some classes back in the day when it was cool to say you were taking classes at the Second City in Chicago. And I re-upped back in 2017. I engaged a coach to help me with my solo performance as a speaker. I wanted to just really upskill my stagecraft. And she tells me, JD, why don't you just sign up for long form and short form improv? I've seen your website. I wasn't looking to audition for Saturday Night Live, but why not pick up a few chops to help me become a better communicator? And while I was in those classes and returned to my study of improv, I saw the applicability immediately. And applied improvisation, which is a huge field, a burgeoning field right now, is an area of interest for me, because I truly believe that the techniques of applied improvisation can help people in business, both in the online and in the real world.
So that sounds so cool. How can you give us some examples of how that might work?
Certainly. If you go to any improv textbook, you'll see all the techniques. And I know we don't have the time to go into that, but improv is a very gamified exercise. There's a lot of things you do to just kind of get your mind all nimble and agile and ready to receive. And that's really the key aspect of being on stage in an improv troupe, is supporting your scene partners. And I call everybody a scene partner. You folks on my screen right here, I've got 6 of you. We look like the Brady Bunch set up right here. You're my scene partners. And the key to improv, the key to good improv, is listening. The key to good digital communication is listening. You have to react, and you have to be proactive in your reactions. And that's what I try to do. I try to be there for my scene partners. I encourage them to contribute. It's not about me laying a funny line in a scene or a skit. It's about playing off what I get, the so-called being present in the moment. And there's so many distractions coming at us. It's difficult to remain present in the moment, isn't it? There are folks you could be looking at right through the webcam, and you know that they're on their email or they're shopping somewhere, and yet they're maintaining eye contact with the camera, pretending to do a good job of listening, but then they have that kind of frozen deer in the headlights moment where they're to respond, and you get the feeling that they weren't there in the first place for you. So engaged conversation is.
So that's really kind of replaced heckling, right? You know, is
to a certain point. Absolutely. Absolutely. And when you look at the threads in email that lead to business wins, it's a matter of extending the conversation, not being a distraction, not spending 5 or 6 emails just to get a cup of coffee or a Zoom call on the calendar, but really creating touch points in business that appeal to the sensibilities of who you're corresponding with. And that's where I feel applied improv really works. I'm keeping hundreds of conversations in play at once. How in the hell do I do that? Well, I fall back on improv. I'd like to thank my nervous system for the ability to fire my synapses in a way that allows me to see value in what I do. I don't look at any of the online world as a necessary evil, folks. Since day one, since the moment I sent my first email, I thought this was something amazing, and I'm hardwired for it.
So Kenya, what do you have to say?
I just wanted to know, what are some LinkedIn profile must-haves? And I had a backup question. Is it possible for you to show us a little improv technique here on the show? No pressure. I just throwing it out there.
I think the most important thing for your LinkedIn profile is to make sure your name, both first and last, are spelled correctly. Because after that, everything kind of falls into place. You know, I'm really not the tips guy. I was early on, because so many of the so-called tips are being spewed out by others as best practices, and it's really common sense at this point. I think when you look at the way that the LinkedIn profile is formatted, it's very unique in the social media world, Kenya, in that all social platforms have a central core. called a profile. But on LinkedIn, it's built out more than most. It's limitless in its ability to store and warehouse content for us. And we choose how we want to populate it. So to play into your question, I subscribe to the notion of iceberg theory. Y'all remember Ernest Hemingway, the great writer, who said that the economy of writing should be very fluid and very simple, and that the writer should be able to convey a thought in as few words as possible. And I think to a certain point, that's what we want to do on our LinkedIn profiles. We're under immense pressure now to be storytellers. And those who are good stewards of their story will find the LinkedIn profile a much more inviting place for them to just share what has happened on the way to becoming who they are now. And a good LinkedIn profile will merge past accomplishments with present value with an eye toward the future. So what I try to do for each of the clients I work with is let folks know, here's what they did, here's what they're capable of doing now, and here's what they can do in the future. And here are the merits of working with them. So that doesn't come off as a snake oily sales pitch. And I think that's the problem with most profiles today. It's just about folks telling other folks how cool they are and not really paying attention to client pain and not aligning themselves with the power of their solution. They're just talking about what it is they did. There's this achievement. They're an Amazon.com bestseller. They're a keynote speaker. They're in the Forbes top 50. I mean, client doesn't care about that, really.
Excellent. So
And
is that
about the
your
improv games, we can get into some improv games. You know, the fundamental component of improv is the yes, comma, and ... where you say something and I start my response by stating yes, and yes, and is the hallmark of the Second City approach to improv. So Coach Kenya, I will ask you to just say whatever comes into your mind. You know, could be something related to this broadcast or not. Say something that comes into your mind and I'll try to extend it with a yes and technique.
Okay,
and the goal is to give you something back. It could be as absurd as possible. It could have nothing to do relating to what you just said, but it could be on the same path. And we try to kind of tell the story together.
Okay, great. Are we doing it now?
Can I play too?
And you'll start yours with yes and. Yeah, we can go around the room.
All right,
Yeah,
let's
yes
go
and
around the room.
exercise.
Cool.
So Kenya, you start and I'll set the example.
So Passage to Profit is a great way to connect and meet other people and expand your network.
Yes, and people can listen to it while they're on the treadmill or walking their dog.
Yes, and they'll learn all sorts of things about intellectual property and hear about some amazing guests.
Yes, and they will learn about everything from animals to computer programs to clothes to jewelry to you name it. Yes.
Wind it up.
Yes, and they will forget about it as they're hearing it until they play the replay that same evening. So that's how the yes and momentum builds. And when you go around in a class setting, you'll hear some fairly ridiculous yes ands, but it's just designed to, again, exercise the fluidity of the mind and just bring out the response. It's not about being funny, but it's about extending the conversation. And how does this apply, JD? All LinkedIn is effective conversation management and keeping these exchanges in play.
Oh, it sounds like fun. And we'll have.
Oh, it's fun.
We should do like an improv thing every Passage to Profit show. What do you think?
Right. So we should do the yes and. So we should keep going. So September, yes and.
Yes, and Passage to Profit, being a guest on this show is a great way to get yourself up really early if you live on the West Coast.
Erica? Yes.
Yes, and I woke up today at 6:30 in the morning.
And Roy?
Yes, and I can't wait to learn more about Italian leather shoes.
Oh,
There you go. Gearhart's, we've turned your broadcast into an improv class. How about
We love it. Yay. Thank you for that. That's great. So, well, that's really world.
I just want to say, LinkedIn has become an incredibly powerful tool for business owners. And the first thing I do is look for somebody on LinkedIn And a lot of times, well, you know about my interviewing business. When I interview people, I looked at their LinkedIn profile and use that to try to figure out some questions to ask them, because I think that's where people really put who they are, right, JD? And
Ideally.
it's very important.
Ideally. And when people are willing to go deep on their stories, that's where you truly learn about them as human beings and not professionals who are just trying to sell a product or service. And I think that's how we stand out. It's hard to believe that you could stand out by being authentic these days. And authenticity and empathy and humility, these are the great traits of leadership. And when you apply them to fashioning your LinkedIn brand infrastructure, that's what moves the needle. That's what creates business wins or career advancement, is by cracking open the window to your world just a little and exposing your humanity. And that's all I've done. I made one switch on my LinkedIn profile during the pandemic because we were all affected and impacted greatly. And most people that I'm working with nowadays are going through a full scale rebrand. A pivot notwithstanding, they're rebranding and they're literally jump shifting into new business worlds. And part of that rebrand comes from deep self-awareness, deep self-assessment, which I've done as well. And if I'm going to be this personal brand strategist I claim to be, I better have walked my talk and lead by example. So I use the term human-centered design thinking to approach my clients and students, and putting themselves under the microscope in a positive way and fleshing out their narrative. What has to be told? What do you want to leave under the iceberg? Iceberg theory again, what's underneath the iceberg and what people don't see. The more you push yourself over the waterline, the greater information that exists about you. You give people a chance to make an informed decision about your capabilities and whether they would want to collaborate or work with you.
Yes. And we unfortunately have to end this segment. So we'll be back with more Passage to Profit with our guest, JD Gershbein.
Who you can find on LinkedIn.
Surprising, isn't it?
And we'll be back right after this message. So stay with us. Welcome back, everybody, to Passage to Profit. This is Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart. I hope you enjoyed our little bit of improv. And we really did appreciate having JD tell us about LinkedIn as a communication tool and how it can be so useful in so many ways. And I think what I liked about JD was he has sort of a depth to his thinking about branding and really wants to get down to the human being behind the behind the LinkedIn profile. And I like that. I like that approach because I like to know people that I'm going to do business with. And so thank you for that. And September Smith is our executive spotlight tonight. And she was kind enough in executive spotlight tradition to donate $100 to the Atlanta Redemption, Inc. I'm not really sure what that is. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about it. But September Smith is a podcast host and a producer who also works the other side of the mic with her company, Of Course Pro. And she transforms entrepreneurs and social impact leaders into amazing podcast guests to grow their enterprise. So welcome, September. So nice to have you on the show.
Well, thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, I would like to amplify a bit the Atlanta Redemption, Inc. That is who I donated to. And it's an organization out of Atlanta that works with survivors of human trafficking. And the woman who started it, a survivor herself, was a guest on my podcast last season. And this story is just so galvanizing. And it's such a worthy cause, the impact that she makes. I just thought I wanted to donate. And what we actually leverage, getting into what I do, we leveraged her performance on my podcast. It was very carefully crafted. Not all of my podcast episodes are crafted, but for her, I wanted to create a vehicle that she could then use to kind of open the door to more media and more understanding, because with the whole issue of human trafficking, a lot of times people in minds immediately go to, oh, gross, don't want to think about it. But we crafted something that was allowed her to then go to bigger media and say, hey, the whole world is listening to this podcast about what's going on here in Atlanta. And they're asking questions. Why are we not paying attention to this? And where she's gone from there is just really inspiring. So I like to help people create their podcast guesting persona in a way that is going to build their brand, drive their business growth, or achieve whatever it is they need to achieve, because it's their unique way of communicating and leveraging media to achieve their goals.
Well, that was a totally awesome story. Thank you for sharing that. And we agree that human trafficking needs more awareness. So how do you work with your clients who want to become better podcasters?
If somebody wants to be a podcaster, I'm a podcaster. I'm all over the tech. Love that stuff. But I actually send them to a colleague of mine who teaches people how to create their own podcast. If you want to spend a tenth of the time and get almost as much bang for your buck and your effort, podcast guesting is a really good option for a lot of people, because you're leveraging other people's shows and other people's efforts. So I would work with somebody if they realize that they want to be harnessing this. Bring them in, first establish what their business goals are, and then what is that story that you need to be telling again and again and again. As JD had said, you've got your personalized communication there. And unlike when you're hosting your own podcast, it differs week to week. When you're out there as a guest, you need to be pretty consistent, because people could pick you up on any one of those episodes. Mm-hmm. And you don't want them, if you're selling, like, for example, shoes. Erika's talking about shoes and handcrafted Italian shoes. But I really want to find out about Erika, and I have the idea that she's a shoe person, and I find a podcast where she's talking about dog breeding. It totally confuses me. And now she's got this piece of information out there that does not align with her brand. So I work with people to make sure they know, what is your brand? So you're delivering that same message time and again, regardless of how good your host is, because some hosts are going to like drag you off into left field. You got to be able to control the conversation, because your podcast episode is out there forever and it will be findable years from now. And you want to make sure it is saying what it is you want it to say.
That's kind of scary.
It is scary. It is scary.
One thing you do for people too. So in full disclosure, when we are talking to people for Passage to Profit, we ask them, have you been on any podcasts? Have you done any media? And people who can say yes to that get bumped up. So, but we have a waiting list now. We're booking people in October. But if you have had media training and been on podcasts, it's a huge plus. So
Yes.
You let people be on your podcast, or you put people on your podcast. And
Not always. No, not everybody's suitable for my podcast. My podcast is called the She's All That podcast, tagline, women doing awesome shit. And so JD, the whole time you were talking, I was thinking, oh, if he was just a woman, I definitely have him on my podcast. So not everybody is the appropriate guest for my podcast, and vice versa. My podcast is not always appropriate for what they need to get across. But I help them figure out what their story is, but also that very thing. What is the kind of show I need to be on? How to be able to identify that, find the ideal shows for you, vet the ones that you shouldn't be on, because as much as you say, oh, they've been on a podcast, in a lot of cases, that does not mean they're a good podcast guest. It just means there's somebody that said, oh yeah, I was on a podcast. I just winged it. Bet the host loved that.
You know, September, I think you're in a really good place with your business too, because I'm calling this the podcast revolution. As we sit here and tape today, there are over 2 million podcasts out there, and a small percentage of them, something like, I don't know, 12, 13% only make it past an episode 6. So the podcast creator has good intentions, getting the word out there, maybe start to tape a few shows, but the marketing of the podcast can fall flat, or the host doesn't want to do it, or it's not worth the trouble, or it's too technologically out there for them, whatever the case may be. So I think as a podcast guest, one would want to always level up. In other words, start by doing your friends' podcasts. And
only if your friend is a good host, because people are horrendous interviewers.
You need to be with good hosts, but a good podcast, to your point, is a gold mine of content.
I think of it as almost like a beautiful insect trained in amber. is out there and people are going to find it. And it's this beautiful snapshot, audio and video, if it's also done in video, snapshot of who you are, your vibe, what you know, how you help people. And it's out there working for you. Those major more than a dozen platforms, unlike social media, which throttles content because it's pay to play, those directories are beaming that stuff unthrottled. Anybody gets on Spotify or iHeartRadio and they go to look for a podcast, you're not going to get shoved down onto page 2. If your keywords are the right keywords for what they're looking for, they're going to find you. So it's an incredible free way of curating your own content online.
It sounds, that's a really good strategy, and it's a unique business model that you have, September. Can you articulate what makes for a good podcast host?
A host?
Yes. If someone's
we want
trying
to learn something.
I
here.
guess you'd have to look at
I'm down for it. So yeah,
you'd have to look at it from the perspective of the listener. So what the listener is wanting is a host who tells them what the show's about, welcomes the guest, gives you a feeling that there's a good relationship and communication between the two of you. I actually have been, I usually listen when I'm at the gym, I'll be on the treadmill listening, and I've actually been really upset to hear that this host is like attacking and like sparring with the guest when the guest obviously did not expect that. A host should be a host, make the person welcome. And if you're having them on their show, they're not there as a prop or just, staging for you to be your amazing self. If you're a host, be a host, a real host. And again, as JD said, it comes down to that listening. You've got to be listening. And it is both for the host, but more so for the guest, it is improv. Because you've got to be ready all the time to be reacting. You might want to ask this question, this question, this question. But if, for example, JD says something that's really amazing, you got to be ready to veer off and yet keep it within the body of the whole of the conversation.
I love that, September. That's why I wanted to have you on this show. I had so much fun with you when we did the podcast.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Yeah, so I know.
And
Kenya has some fun.
congratulations.
Yeah.
Congratulations on getting Fireside Podcast out there.
Oh, thanks. And Kenya.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just wanted to know, what were you doing before you got into podcasting?
It turns out when I look back, I've been helping people. I started way back. I was working with researchers in Japan. Actually, I lived in Japan for 15 years and working with researchers there, figuring out how to articulate their cutting edge technology and research findings in a way that when they put their paper out, when they got on stage at international conferences, also helping them get booked on these international conferences, that it wasn't just this stodgy barrage of technical information. It was something really engaging that would connect with the audience that they wanted to have relationships with, and they wanted to be on the horizon for those people. And from there, I went into instructional design, which is, again, what's your messaging? What is the sequence of information that we need to encode here in this story to change people's thinking, to make them understand what we want them to understand? So I've been doing that and digital tech, audio and video since the early 2000s.
It seems like it all came full circle for you, because that's exactly how a podcast is set up.
Mm-hmm. And what really brought it all is sometimes you look at it and you go like, why didn't I think of this? When I was looking for some way to keep myself sane during the pandemic, because I usually work from Mexico in the winters, I thought, I love audio, I love video, I love interviewing amazing women doing awesome shit, as I like to call it, and tell the world about them. It became my sanity project. And then I realized like, oh, not everybody actually gets what it is to be a good podcast guest. So I started working with companies.
And so when you're working with clients who want to be podcast guests, what kinds of things do you talk to them about insofar as their messaging is concerned?
That's the very first thing. I actually draw on some of my early engineering skills, which is the subject matter expert interview. That's the basis of everything. I got to get in there deep and really find out what is the groundwork here that we're dealing with, but also to then find those wow factors that really tell the story, that impact people, the things that are like, that is what's going to grab people's attention. This needs to be, and of course, it's got to be interwoven with your story and where you want to go with your story. And once we've got that, a story that aligns with your goals, then that's when we start working on, okay, what are the shows you need to be on that are going to be able to showcase you and amplify your message? How do you pitch it and get booked? How do you, I also do a bit on the tech because not everybody knows how to use cameras and microphones and that sort of thing. How to actually use your own authentic voice so that when you go on that show, the real you is coming forward and people can decide, I really like that person. I love her vibe, or oh my God, never. So, and then the really crucial thing that most people miss is how to leverage that content later. Because if you were to pay somebody to create a segment of you in an authoritative way, you've been asked a question to tell, what it is you do, that would start at about $5,000. Is to be on a podcast or a video podcast and have this amazing content of you standing in your expertise and your authority. That is gold. So you need to know how to repurpose it, and you need to know what your marketing process is going to be using that content. So that's what I do with clients.
In terms of the post promotion, if I can just add a wrinkle on that, for business podcasts, LinkedIn is a great fertile garden for promoting podcast episodes.
Absolutely.
And it's not that everybody's going to come flock and listen to it, but what you do have is you start to compile a portfolio. If you're guesting on 3, 4, 5, 10, 12 podcasts, you now lead people to this content. So rather than just do the spray and pray approach, hey, check out my latest appearance on this amazing podcast. I was terrific.
Yes. And I said before, that stuff is out there forever. So just because we did it this week, it's still relevant. If you're still doing the same thing, it's still relevant next year and 2 years from now. So having it there, as you say, in this curated collection on your LinkedIn profile and other places online.
Evergreen.
Yeah. When people find you, I do that, as Elizabeth said, when I want to know what somebody's doing or who they are, LinkedIn. And then I want to see video and or podcasts because I really want to know who they are.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a few episodes of Passage to Profit we all just would go away, but that's just not the way it works.
You could pull them as the heads of the show. You could pull them, but as a guest, you've got no control. So you better know what you're doing because that's going to be out there, and it's not your choice to pull it or not.
Oh, well, at least we're authentic.
So unfortunately, we're coming to the end of the segment, but September, what a neat name. I really like the name September. Thank you for enlightening us and teaching us about podcasting. And I think you have a great solution for people who want to get out and let the world know a little bit about themselves without having to do all of the podcast building stuff that is really time consuming. So,
and you can find September on LinkedIn at September Smith, or you can find her website, of course, pro.com.
We'll be right back. You're listening to Passage to Profit, and we have a message for you that you'll want to pay special attention to. Welcome back, everybody. This is Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart on Passage to Profit, the show that's all about entrepreneurs, small businesses, and the intellectual property that helps them flourish.
Boy, are we happy.
And we are. And right now, we are going to move to our media maven, Kenya Gipson from iHeartRadio, who's going to be talking about Power Moves. So, Kenya, who do we have on the table today?
So Power Move today, we're going to talk about social media mogul Paris Hilton. And she recently launched a cooking show on YouTube that got a lot of traction. And now she's actually been able to pitch it to Netflix, and they're going to pick it up and distribute it globally for her. So she's been able to leverage the power of social media for a long time, and now has helped it transition into a major show for her. So, super excited to hear that. The funny thing about it is she's not even a chef, and she technically really can't cook. It's going to be a show about her tapping into her more domesticated side and, exploring new ingredients and, sharing time with her celebrity friends and, exploring kitchen gadgets. So I thought that was like a superpower move because she can't even really cook. right? And she's gonna
I
have
was-
a cooking
I-
show.
I,
She doesn't even look like she eats. She's about as big around as my little finger.
Well, you
but
know
I
what
was thinking the same thing as you were saying. This is like, has Paris Hilton ever cooked a single meal in her
She
whole
actually-
life? I mean,
she
her
did.
father's a hotel guy.
Right. She actually did on YouTube. She made lasagna and it got 5 million views, which led to this show. So there you go. You don't even technically have to know how to cook. You just have to know how to create great content and entertain people. And sky's the limit.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, people were saying, I can't believe Paris Hilton cooks. I got to see this.
I have to see
That's-
Wow, pretty cool though. The power of YouTube.
Yep. And that's
They should be a sponsor too.
All right. So what's up for Fireside?
Fireside. I am making behind the scenes progress. So I am so excited. I found a website developer for me. So I don't really need a designer. I need a developer. And I found somebody that will do it for a reasonable price. I am very excited about that. And I'm moving that forward. Oh, so for those of you who don't know what it is, I guess I should explain it. It's a video directory of small businesses. So I interview business owners and I put them in my directory. And I am learning so much and having so much fun with that. And I am so excited to get the website that I want, or as close as I can get to the website I want, because then I can really start pushing this a lot harder. So
Yeah, it's a great idea. If you're in the small business world and you do a lot of networking, this type of product can really make you available to a wide variety of people who can, as JD and September have been talking about, get to know you on a personal level before they actually reach out and contact you.
oh, I remember what else I was going to say about it. Oh, I started drafting the first patent for it. So
That's
yes, I'm a patent agent. I'm not an attorney, but I'm a patent agent. So I started drafting a patent on some of the Fireside features that I can't talk about because you have to get a
right.
patent
Woman of
first.
many talents.
So yeah, so I'm excited about that too.
That sounds great. So
Question?
Yeah.
Question? As a podcast or a show, should we be taking out patents?
If you have something unique, so I'm doing some special programming things,
software programming.
software programming associated with it that I can't talk about, obviously.
Okay.
But if
Okay.
you have something really unique that you're doing, then you should, I mean, you have a copyright, but you should maybe look into more intellectual property protection.
That's good info.
Now on to our shoes. Erika Carrero with Elizee, L-I-Z-E-E Shoes, handcrafted Italian leather shoes. Did you bring a shoe with you to show us?
Yes, I did.
Oh, I've got leather shoes too. Shoot, you
Oh
want to see
my
mine?
gosh, that's beautiful. For those of you who can't see it, it's a red and white.
It's
pump.
blush, but yeah, it's the camera.
Oh my gosh. And so these are beautiful.
Thank you.
They'll be on her website. So you need to go to the website to see these shoes. So tell us
Yes.
your story about your shoes.
Yes, of course. So I'm so glad to be here in the show. I'm Erika Carrero, and I'm the founder of Elizee. We're a luxury shoe brand that combines heritage Italian craftsmanship with innovative comfort technology. And I will expand on the innovation part in a little bit. But we make gorgeous luxury high heels that keep women comfortable on their feet all day. And how did I get started? Well, I'm a former Silicon Valley CFO, but I always love fashion. And I travel a lot domestically and internationally for work. And I struggled to find beautiful shoes that were also comfortable enough to keep pace with me. September, you work with women business owners, and you know that women today, we have very active lives. We have busy lives, running from meeting to meeting, picking up kids from school, attending functions, and we really need shoes that can keep up with us. You know, after a long day in heels, we know the pain that the heels can cause. And I'm sure, you know, Elizabeth, Kenya, you slipped off your heels under the table at work or in a restaurant just to get some relief, right? And that's because traditional high heels are narrow and they tend to pinch the forefoot and concentrate your weight in the ball of the foot. And then that throws off body alignment and that causes pain. And that's because they're typically not designed for wearability. The luxury high heels are still frequently designed by men who never have to spend a full day in them. So I knew that a better solution was possible. And I'm in a mission of reshaping luxury. And coming from the startup world where innovation is everywhere, I decided to make it happen. So I took a leave from the tech startup world and I traveled to Milan. I study design and technical shoe construction, and then I connected with an amazing factory. They do the shoes for Men All Atlantic, and I connected with a team of artisans, and combining their expertise with podiatrists, we spent a year developing this collection, and we engineer a custom insole. It's called the Plush Contour insole, and that has become the innovation of the brand. And we use the best Italian leathers and materials, but the key differences that make Elizee shoes more comfortable are there's the incredible attention to fit. There's no stitching near pressure points. So if you have a bunion, for example, it's not going to be, damaging your foot. And our signature difference is concealed inside the shoe. So our Plush Contour insole cradles the foot in 3 layers of responsive memory foam and cushioning for maximum comfort. And I can expand more of that, but we basically use medical grade materials, and that is used for orthopedic and prosthetic use as the base layer. Then we have a gel cushioning that molds to your foot, and then beautiful leather in the outside, and it's breathable and it's shiny and beautiful. I don't know if you see it here. So my mission here is really in launching the brand Elizee is to empower a woman's dynamic lifestyle. I've given her shoes that are both gorgeous and comfortable, and we've launched our first collection at elizeeshoes.com, and please follow us at Elizee Shoes on Instagram and Facebook. Yeah, I'm so excited to have the shoes available everywhere.
Yeah, well, I'm excited. I want to try those. That one shoe both shoes you showed were really beautiful. And I'm sure there's a lot more on your website. So Kenya, I know you're kind of a fashion maven, much more so than I am. What do you think?
I'm like salivating at the black booties that you held up.
Yes. They have
Those are
lace
wonderful
here, and so yes, and they're high heels, but you really don't feel it because of the insole that we've developed.
Yeah, no, it's amazing because I literally have shoes that I know I'm only going to get 10 minutes out of. They're literally from getting out of the car, standing in one spot, and then sitting for wherever I'm going to be. And it's just, that's how you live, right? And it's not comfortable. So I love what you've been able to do in this space. And in terms of like the designs, because they don't look like Dr. Scholl's design, right? They're really beautiful and trendy. Where do you get no shade to Dr. Scholl's, but like, where do you get your inspiration from in terms of the design of the shoes?
Well, I start from a functional perspective. So I make sure that the shoe is going to be comfortable and then design around it. And I love to play with materials. So, this shoe is red, but it has blush here. And then this shoe is suede, but it also has, a combination of materials. So playing with it, and I get a lot of inspiration from nature. So I just go and take pictures of rocks, right? And then, from there, I translate to the leathers. Let's see what leather looks like it. So it's really, inspiration comes from everywhere, but it's really, just playing with the materials and making the shoes stand out.
Yeah.
Excellent. September, what do you think?
I am no connoisseur of high-heeled shoes. It's been decades since I've worn a pair. No, not true. I wore them for 10 minutes, as Kendra said. One time, or Kenya said, at one time I had a New Year's party, and then no. But that they're comfortable. That's amazing.
Yeah, you should try them. I took these heels to Hawaii, and it was raining. I was literally running in the rain, and it's just my family was amazed. It's like you really can run in these shoes. So I'm really excited, for people to try it, and the people that don't wear heels anymore. It's definitely a good option now.
That should be on video on your website. Somebody running in those high heels.
Yeah.
Will do.
So JD, what do you think?
I don't know how you gals wear those. I just don't. And as a guy who has had to hold my wife's high heels while she switches into flats because they're killing her feet, I only go on that kind of feedback. But from a design point of view, incredible. I mean, if only they were easier on the physiology, right, Erika?
Yes, yes, and that's the goal, right? That's what we're trying to innovate and change and reshape luxury. Like I was saying, it needs to be, we need shoes that are comfortable and we don't have to take off after 5 minutes.
So how high are the heels? Are they?
So this is 3 inches.
Mhm.
And this is higher, but we use platforms that you don't see it here, but we use platforms so the real inclination is about the same as 3 inches. So you don't see it like that, but, and then with the insole, it's really graded. So it's contoured. So it gives you more support where you actually need it as your body weight shifts when you wear high heels. So we spent a lot of time really working on this and, and trying the shoes and seeing where we need more support and working with podiatrists. And most of them say, I don't recommend heels, but, this is what I would do if if I had to start a shoe from the beginning. And that's what we've done. And so it's been a quite interesting process to go through this.
Are you going to do any lower heels?
Yes. So the next collection is lower heels, is kitten heels, and we're also going to do espadrilles, and we're taking a new take on it, obviously, with materials and continue to use the insole, and we're continue to innovate on the insole as well. That's this is our first collection, and I think it's great in what we've accomplished, but there's always more to do for the next collection.
Mm-hmm. Erika, can you spell your website? Because I'm like Googling like a mad woman trying to find those shoes.
Of course.
You've got a new customer.
Yes, awesome. It's Elizee, so ELIZEE shoes.com. And so Elizee Shoes. It's like Elizabeth. My middle name is Elizabeth, so the name comes a little bit from there. ElizeeShoes.com.
So what size ranges do you have?
6 to 10.
What about wide? You probably don't have wide, do you?
Well, so the shoes have more room in the toe box rather than your typical shoes. So they, and then depending on the materials, they are very comfortable in this area. So I had about maybe more than 20 people trying the shoes with different feet sizes and widths, and so I make sure that it would fit to somebody with a slim fit, but somebody with a more wider fit, and depending on I have another shoe here, so it expands a little bit lower to cover more of your foot, and so if you have a wider fit, something like this would fit too.
Awesome! Wow.
Yeah.
We're coming to the end of our time, but I love those shoes. Does anybody have one last question they want to ask quickly?
Yes, I have a question. Erika, I think it's incredible what you're doing. Form versus function. It's amazing what you're doing. You're combining 2 aspects. You're basically bringing what major manufacturers like Nike and Adidas, and you're revolutionizing an industry where it's so much wanted. So I think it's incredible.
Thank you.
I think it's a no-brainer, and the fact that you're incorporating so much style into it, the designs are amazing. So I wish you much success.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yes, that was very well said. Thanks, Roy. So unfortunately, we have to end the segment, but I see everybody on here going to her website anyway. So as she said, it's Elizee Shoes, ELIZEE shoes.com, and lots of beautiful shoes there for anyone who likes to wear.
You have a birthday
shoes
coming up, right? So
this is Passage to Profit, the Inventor Show with Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart. Our special guest, J.D. Gershbein, our executive spotlight, September Smith, and you are listening to WOR 710, the Voice of New York. We will be right back. Welcome back, listeners. You are listening to Passage to Profit, the Inventor Show on WOR 710 with Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart. Our special guest, J.D. Gershbein, our executive spotlight, September Smith. And now we were on to our final presenter. But if you are a business owner and you are looking to build your team, make it more effective, add people, the right people, Roy is your guy. So welcome, Roy Peter with We Build Teams, Inc.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard and Elizabeth, for this opportunity. It's such a humbling opportunity to be surrounded by such subject matter experts as JD, September, and of course, Erika, those shoes. I'm fortunate to be here today, and I'm the founder of We Build Teams. We Build Teams was built and designed in New York City pre-pandemic, and our mission is simple. We help companies with their people, with their process, and with potential. Simply put, what do we do? Companies hire my team to go in and understand challenges that they can't seems to get their wrap their heads around, and try and figure out what's going on, whether it's retention issues, growth issues, stagnation issues, right? And what We Build Teams does is we conduct a thorough in-depth needs analysis and try to understand what's going on. Is it your team dynamics? Do you have the right culture? Do you have managers who don't know what they're doing? Are they micromanaging or overusing their strengths with their team members? And then we start to formulate ideas in terms of how to create unity within your teams by tapping into the human potential that we have. Now, I come from a background of having worked with very technical teams for over 20 years in tech startups. In that time, I've found that you can deliberately design success by focusing on three things: by attracting, retaining, and developing the right team members, right? If you focus on the people first, then focus on the task, you can build greatness from within. What you also do is you create cultures that are inclusive, cultures that are positive, and you create a place where people want to come to work, right? I enjoy what I do, and I left my space working in technology to focus on people because I'm passionate about people. And to this date, it's been 18 months since I've been open, and I can't tell you how excited I am to have worked with clients all throughout the US. And again, it's We Build Teams, and my name is Roy Peter, the founder of We Build Teams.
Well, I can tell you, we agree with you 100% here at Gearhart Law. You know what? If you hire the wrong person, it's a disaster, and trying to find the right fit is a challenge. So I think people with businesses really need what you're doing.
Thank you, Elizabeth. You know, the interesting thing is it doesn't start with just hiring the right person. It's creating and understanding self-awareness within your organization. Each organization has its own DNA. It has its own culture, right? I think just if you hire a recruiter to be able to hire the right person without understanding the organization, that you're doomed to failure. I think you need to understand what is the DNA of this organization? What truly makes them great? And then by exemplifying those attributes and finding the right family or team member to join that group, that DNA, you can achieve greatness, and your chances of success will be tremendously higher.
I agree.
Yeah, I was watching a Gary V video not too long ago, and one of the audience
I love Gary
members,
V. He's awesome.
Yeah, and one of the audience members, he said, "How do you grow?" And he says, "Well, if you want growth, you have to become an HR company." And it's really true, because at some point it's all HR, right? I mean, there's skills and deliverables and structure, but it's really the human element, the people how they're working together, that turns out to be a real key in being successful in the business world. So
absolutely, Richard. It's interesting. You mentioned a key word, human. It's a human element, right? What JD mentioned is be authentic. Businesses need to be authentic with their employees. Businesses need to be open to ideas from their employees. We've all read about the supposed great resignation that's coming upon us, right? How do we counter that? How do we work through it? Listen to your employees. Don't have the approaches, I'm hiring you to do such, just do what I'm asking you. Create a two-way dialogue. So this way you create a culture that's inclusive. People want to understand, what do you want from them? What does success looks like, right? Where am I going? Am I just going to be in the same position for the next 5 years, 10 years? What's my career path? What are my chances to one day becoming the COO or the CFO of a company? What do I need to do?
Well, interestingly, with so many companies having kept their teams working remotely at home during the pandemic, they've let even the easiest and most basic processes kind of go a little bit by the wayside. And I think continuous improvement, which should be subscribed to by all cultures, is there. And sometimes that external input is more valuable than the feedback they get from within. So to Roy's point, when you take an objective look at a company and what's keeping them from growing or what's keeping them from maximizing their turnaround, it does come down to people. And we've all seen the past 17 months, starting from March 2020, how morale has been just so amazingly affected by the global pandemic, and employee engagement still remains one of the top priorities for any business.
Absolutely, JD. I mean, I'm not sure if you know, according to a recent Gallup study, there's about 80% of the working population that feels disengaged from what they're doing. So, and we can't let this continue. How are we going to continue to be profitable? Businesses have to flourish. People need jobs, right? So we have to take a different approach to understanding what drives our people, what motivates them, what empowers them, and how do we leverage whatever resources we have available to us that the businesses get to achieve their goals, but the employees also get to achieve their goals in kind.
To dovetail that comment, you've got a lot of people who have discovered the joys of working at home. And if you're going to empower people, you give them the ability to work at home as long as they remain productive or efficient, they justify their inclusion on the payroll. I think that's the next great challenge for employers is how do you manage a hybrid environment where you've got people coming into the office, you've got people who are valuable to the organization, driving a winning culture, who are working behind the scenes at home. It's about keeping folks on the same page and aligned with the vision.
And keeping the lines of communication open, right? I've seen arrangements go from, you've got to come in full-time starting October to let's try a hybrid approach of you coming in 3 times a week. And then we might do situations where work desk and workstations become temporary use only, whereby if you're not coming in 3 days a week, we're going to assign you times where you to do it. Intelligent organizations are taking new approaches to trying to maximize productivity because they understand that the workforce has changed, right? But listening to your workforce, listening to what their needs, that's what's important, that's what's critical. It's about finding the right person for the right job at the right time. It's not just about hiring anyone. It's about understanding what are the challenges. Because JD, to a point, during the pandemic, when we were in the thick of it, there were a number of managers who were not used to managing remote employees, and they were overusing their strengths. What do I mean by that? They felt they need to check in every hour with their team members. And this was causing burnout. I mean, allow team members to do what they do best, right? Allow them to be productive. Obviously, if there are corrective actions or conversations that have to be had, don't shy away from it. Have those conversations. Create an open dialogue. Are they always going to be positive? No. But have that dialogue.
I just wanted to piggyback off of that a little bit and ask a question. And that is, if you did a survey, would part of the reason why working from home is popular because some percentage of people want to avoid the other people at the office? I'm serious about that because it is.
Full disclosure, I worked from home and he worked in the office the whole last year.
I think, yes, to answer your question, I think people are going through individual struggles and people are going through challenges. But I also do think that team members, employees, they crave that togetherness that comes along from being together as part of a team. That the creative juices that flow when you're a part of a group, when you're brainstorming. I've found that some of the best work can be done when you're put in those situations. Now, does it have to be full-time? I don't know. I think every industry is different, right? It depends in terms of the industry that you're in.
So September.
Yeah. In September.
Yeah, I was really interested in whether or not your company, Roy, actually helps companies, businesses that are building their team navigate what is going on right now. What is it going to look like for us? What is the optimal structure, the hybrid? I would say enforcing the everyone must be in the office thing is, unless you're
the wrong way to
Walmart.
go.
not a way to go. Do you help them find that sweet spot for them and give them the methodologies to deal with that?
Yes, thank you, September. Yes, I do. So on the operational consulting side of it is I go in and I start to chart a path based on what the business goals are. So we start to take a look at it. What do you want it to look like in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? And I call myself really an accountability partner. I like what you said, JD, having an outside view. I'm able to hold businesses accountable, right? I'm able to say to them, this is the path that you set forth. Where are you in this journey, right? What do you need to do? And sometimes it's not so easy to have an employee tell you what you need to do, but it's okay to have a third-party consulting company come and say, this is what success looks like to you. These are the steps we need to take. And where are you in the process? Why aren't you here? What can we do to get you here? What can I do? Developing processes.
Yeah,
Yes,
so I want to hear from Kenya quickly, because Kenya actually worked inside iHeart Media during this whole thing as an employee and helped us keep this show going. Somehow she got the management to agree. So Kenya.
Yeah, no, I think this is like wonderful information. I guess I have a loaded question. How do you approach leadership that might be in denial about their company culture?
So there are quite a few behavioral tools and surveys out there that can be deployed for these types of instances, right? Trying to get anonymous surveys done. I mean, we've all heard of these surveys. You go through Survey Monkeys. The first thing to identify, working with large organizations, is to try to create a self-awareness within the people at the executive level at the top. Are you aligned? Your leaders of the ship, are you aligned together? Do you know where we're going? Are we just ships sailing in different directions? Very quickly, when you try to identify, is the leadership team aligned first, you will be able to uncover a lot of the problems, because everyone is looking at leaders to see, you should know where we're going. Do you have an idea? Have you communicated your path clearly to everyone else? That helps to uncover a lot of challenges. The very next step is then, yes, to go and create engagement surveys, because you do want to hear from your employees, good or bad. Feedback is feedback. I've always said this to a lot of my team members and people I've worked with. Feedback is feedback. If it's all positive, you're doing something wrong. There's always room for improvement. What can I do better, right? And so that's where I find, for me, it starts with communication and transparency. Creating a healthy culture includes an organization that must have communication, transparency, and the willingness to listen. I hope that answers your question, Kenya.
It definitely does. I think those are very hard conversations to have sometimes. So I just was curious to see how you would tackle that.
I would like to add, Kenya, I think management or those companies have to be sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. There has to be an impetus. Something has to happen. It could be, they're suffering from extreme retention issues. Something has to happen to want them to take action. Only then would they be able to listen. And I've got clients who haven't reached that point, and I explain to them, I don't think you're quite ready yet, because it's quite drastic, the changes that you're trying to set forth. You're not quite there yet, right? And then I have clients like, I don't know what to do. Help me get to the next step, right? So it really goes that there's an impetus, there's an event that occurs that forces people to want to change.
Excellent.
Makes
I think
sense.
that's really true. Well, thank you. Unfortunately, we've come to the end of our time. This was really great information. Thank you so much, Roy. So that was Roy Peter with We Build Teams, Inc. And you are listening to Passage to Profit, the Inventor Show on WOR 710, the Voice of New York. We will be right back.
Well, welcome back, everybody. What a fantastic show. I thoroughly enjoyed myself, and it was really just amazing to hear all of the great information from our guests.
It was. So who was on the show? If you don't know, go back and listen to the podcast or look at our YouTube channel. I'm going to say this again. I say it every show. We get the best looking people on this show, present company excluded, but everybody else. So watch them on YouTube. Or you can listen to the podcast on iHeart tomorrow. Lots of ways to hear what went on. But who we had, JD Gershbein, and you spell his name JD, and then Gershbein, Gershbein. He has Owlish Communications. You can find out a lot there. He has jdgershbein.com, and he's on LinkedIn.
He's a master of all trades, but especially communication. And
Yeah,
that
he's
is
a
the
very
key.
interesting person to talk to. And then September Smith, who helps people do podcasts. She does, she's white glove, the whole works. So
And podcast guest, and that
Yeah.
is a great angle. So
she helps you figure out how to do it, how to get on it, everything. So it's ofcoursepro.com. And September Smith, just like it's spelled, you can find her on LinkedIn. And then we had Erika Carrero, hope I said that right, with
Yes.
Elizee Shoes, Elizee shoes.com. Beauty and comfort and style all together in one shoe. Handcrafted Italian leather.
you got to check out the website. These are
Yeah.
incredible products.
And then really, if you have a business or thinking of starting a business, Roy Peter, We Build Teams Inc. Before you do your first hire, when you're getting started, or even if you're in the middle of something, he really helps you get the right people in the right places and figure out what your culture is and get everything so that it works well for you. So
Yep, Roy will tell you, you're in the business of HR, and he's a great source of information for that.
right. So
Before we sign off, final words of wisdom, September, do you have anything you'd like to share with our audience?
It's been a pleasure to be here. And the really interesting thing was how in so many disparate entrepreneurs we have here today, communication was that key reoccurring theme. And in that, the listening and appropriately responding to your audience being kind of the underpinning of everything.
Perfect. And JD?
Well, all I can ask as a podcast guest is that my podcast hosts create a safe space for the flow of ideas. And to your credit, both of you, you created that space superbly. And I'm at my best when I don't know what's coming. And as you can see, unscripted, going off script, throwing away the script, flying off the script. That's how I get things done. And thank you for making me feel comfortable and welcome. And thanks to my fellow panelists here on the program.
Well, thank you very much, JD. Those are kind words, and right back at you. You're a wonderful guest. So, but before we go, we'd like to thank all the people that make Passage to Profit possible. Our producer, Noah Fleischman, our program coordinator, Alicia Morrissey, our video editor, Chatterboss, and we'd like to thank the whole iHeart team for their contributions. We've been using their digital market platform for a long time, and they've done just a fantastic job.
And if you want to find out more about that, contact Kenya Gipson with a P, Kenya Gipson at iHeartMedia.com. She can help you with radio needs, advertising needs. She is the best creative I've ever met. She's amazing. Totally.
So that's it for us. We're signing off. We'll be back next week with another Passage to Profit. Thank you for listening. And you're listening to Passage to Profit on WOR 710, the voice of New York.